Buzzed. Howard Bender, a.k.a. Roto Buzz Guy, is here to help you get through Thursday on Getting Buzzed. And now, please welcome to the virtual stage, Mr. Howard Bender.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in. Thanks for joining me here for Getting Buzzed. I am Howard Bender, and appreciate you tuning in, whether it's the Fantasy Alarm YouTube page, the Better Sports Network YouTube page, whatever it is where you're watching right now. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. It's how we feed our families here, please, people. So appreciate you guys all tuning in. Wow, what a great show. If this is your first time here joining us for Getting Buzz, listen, it's sports talk, it's fantasy sports talk, little bit of an edge to it there. I don't pull any punches. I'm not out here to call people out or really just destroy anybody, but I'm here to kind of throw at least a different angle on the way things are going around football, fantasy football, and all the other sports around there. We are going to focus today on the game of football, reality football, fantasy football. Why? Because my guest today, I love him so much. So happy to have him joining us later on here. Bob Harris is here tonight, folks, at Football Diehard on Twitter. You know him from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. We love Bob Harris. We're going to have him join us in a little while, and we're going to have a little fun with Bob. That's right. What are we doing today? Well, I hope I don't spoil the surprise. Maybe he's just backstage and he's not listening in right now. But in honor of Bob going to the Metallica shows in Texas the last couple ways, and then my producer, Adam Bernard. Adam, get in here, man. Come on in here. Come say hi to the kids, baby. So, Adam, you're going to the Metallica shows this weekend at SoFi Stadium. You got your boys coming into town. You guys are going to have yourselves a great time. Bob just went to those shows. I know you streamed one of the shows, so how pumped are you?
I'm pretty pumped. Yeah, they so when they did the two shows in Dallas on their no repeat weekend last weekend, I was able to go to the Sunday live stream, so that was fun. Always cool to see a band in a movie theater. And yeah, I'm going both Friday and Sunday at SoFi Stadium. So hit me up at Pucking Thoughts on Twitter if you're going too. I'll be in GA both nights. I'll be looking for you.
The one song that you do not want to walk away from these two nights without hearing live.
So my White Whale song is Leper Messiah off of Master of Puppets because it's the only song off that album I haven't heard, and I've heard a few of their albums in their entirety. So and I've just they played it the last 2 weekends, so now I don't know if it's become a staple, and I'm definitely gonna hear it, or if it's now I'm not because they played it. So that's the White Whale, and then there's a few tracks off the new record I'd like, but this will be times 36 and 37, I believe, seeing them. So I'm excited.
Fantastic. Well, I'm super pumped for you. A big Metallica fan. The first time I saw Metallica live, I think it was 1987. It was the Monsters of Rock tour, and I saw them over at. It was back then. It was called the Meadowlands in New Jersey, where the Jets and the Giants play. So super pumped for you for that. Super pumped that Bob had such a great time at the shows. And what we're going to do today is we're doing a heavy metal draft. We're going to talk to Bob, get to know him a little bit. If you guys don't know Bob Harris, you're going to love getting to know him. He's an absolute blast. He's phenomenal on the radio. I love him so much. And, listen, Football Diehards, one of the best fantasy football sites out there as well. So we'll get into all of that. We'll get into all of that promotion. But first, before we bring in Bob, we got to talk about today's top stories. And, listen, the headlines right now, I don't want to sit here and go back and forth with, some of this guy's off the PUP list. This guy's out of concussion protocol. No, I want to talk to you guys here today about two important things. The first one here is that you're going to all have to stop listening to me about the New York Jets. All right. Listen, that's look at me in the calendar there. I love me in the calendar there. I love that so much. But today, here we go, folks. I have to warn you off because right now you don't see it on. Yeah, there it is. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Lisa Ann from Lisa Ann Does Fantasy Better, which you saw us on Wednesday nights. She finally convinced me, said I needed to do it. I needed to get a better understanding of Aaron Rodgers, a better understanding of my New York Jets. And so she asked me to watch Hard Knocks. And so I've never watched Hard Knocks before. I've never seen, like, believe it or not, since the inception of it, I've never done it because, you know, I always feel like it's a distraction. I always feel like you're going to have players and coaches performing for the cameras. So I never really, you know, I wasn't accepting it as something being incredibly genuine. And so that's why I haven't watched in the past. She convinced me to finally do it so we could talk about it on the show. And here it is. I am that fat ass Kool-Aid man right now in green, week 1 of the NFL season. I will be head to toe in green because Hard Knocks has just been, I mean, this was the ultimate hype fest for me. The ultimate hype fest. I haven't been so excited about the New York Jets going into a season since 1999. 1998, I went with friends of mine to the AFC Championship game in Denver. Jets had the lead 6-0 at the half, and then boom, what happened? They blew it. They lost 10-6. Denver went on to go into the Super Bowl, and the Jets were like, oh, okay. So walking into the 1999 season, we had hope, we had excitement, we had dreams. And I went to that first game for the Jets in the 99 season. And what happened on the first series? Vinny Testaverde ruptured his Achilles. So boom, there it is. Like that season over, done. We all knew it. It was a disaster. And so, yes, obviously coming into this season, I was getting all sorts of like crazy, like nervous about this season and whatever. And so I figured if I watched Hard Knocks, it would be horrible for me. And it is actually horrible for me because now I am so on this hype train. I am so into the Jets right now. The Aaron Rodgers love fest, I completely expected the love fest to happen. I definitely did. And, you know, you can't look away from that. You know, you can't say, well, you know, they're just hyping up Aaron. You have to hype up Aaron Rodgers. You have to be able to do all of that because he is the central focus of this team. The offense does not work without him. I can make jokes about him being the offensive coordinator. Nathaniel Hackett gives him total autonomy at the line. But as a fan of the, you know, I wanted to love Aaron Rodgers, and I didn't when he first came into the Jets. I was worried that it was going to be a big media circus. I was worried about all the nonsense that we saw with him on the Pat McAfee show and all the other stuff that goes on with him and that. And then, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm watching it. And, you know, I get that there's certain hype up for the show, but there are certain things that you could read between the lines when you look at it with Aaron Rodgers. And it's not just the, you know, the handshake that he did where he was like, yeah, you know what? Okay, maybe the Northern California boy who went to California, Berkeley, is a little bit of a puffer. Maybe he is. I don't know. I'm not going to accuse. I'm not going to say it. But that little, you know, gesture there, it was like, was that why you loved him? I was like, no. You know, the reason why I loved Aaron Rodgers so much through this whole thing was actually for the way he was going around and talking to Robert Saleh, Nathaniel Hackett, all the players, trying to get them to go and like engage with Liev Schreiber. Liev Schreiber, like we expect him to what? Because he's an actor, we expect him to be the most outgoing, fun-loving guy? No, it doesn't work like that. How many times have you seen an actor or an actress on a talk show and you're like, man, they don't come off like as well as they should, or as the, you know, if somebody's not writing the dialogue for them. And so Schreiber was you know, you could tell he was starstruck. He's standing there with Aaron Rodgers. He's there with the Jets. They do the whole gimmick of the helicopter and bringing him in there. And then nobody wanted to talk to him. Why? Because he's Liev Schreiber. Because everybody watched Ray Donovan. Because everybody knows that he was Sabretooth in the X-Men movies. Everybody knows that he was Ross Rhea from Goon. I mean, he was, you know, so many great roles that he's played. Such a great actor. Such a phenomenal dude. And so to see Rodgers like really trying to take the time to get everybody to just hang out with him, treat him like a normal person, show that you're just as excited about him being here as he is about being here. And that really hit home with me. It really did. And that's just a personality trait that you see with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And so for me, that kind of turned me around on him in a certain sense, like just steadily over and over again. That's kind of what gets you. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat there. I love everybody out there. Scampers, Fatty McFats, Rod Elliott, everybody's in here and done. So great to have you guys all here joining me. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that chat. I'm also just kind of talking to you guys here. So That was one of the things that I loved about Liv Schreiber. But the real thing that got me going about the New York Jets, the real thing that got me so pumped up was the bromance between Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. Last year's offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, preparing for the season against each other in practice. Like he's teaching, Wilson's teaching Sauce about wide receivers. Sauce is teaching Wilson about, cornerbacks and coverage. And the two of them just, at that such a strong level, it's just going to make them better and better. And so I love that relationship there. I'm not going to lie. I got misty. I got choked up. It was absolutely beautiful for me to see. And, Sauce Gardner giving Aaron Rodgers the diamond and emerald encrusted, necklace. I mean, all of this stuff here. So I'm just warning you all right now. I think my last 2 or 3 underdog best balls that we've done on Alarm Fantasy Football, I've stacked Rodgers with Wilson, and I've thrown Lazard in there. I mean, the Kool-Aid is abundant. And I'm like, not only am I like chugging out of the pitcher, but it's all pouring down my body there. It's all just like a green juice mustache and just everywhere there. And I saw time to do the green hair again from Rod Elliott. I actually lost that bet. A couple of months ago, a couple of years ago. I don't even remember, but I dyed my hair green. I'm not saying I won't do it for week 1, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. So, there you go. Be very wary of my advice about drafting New York Jets. I'll just say it like that because the hype machine is in full force. What you don't need to be wary of is the article that I published. There it is. The article I published on fantasyalarm.com yesterday. Howard Bender's fantasy football fades for 2023. And listen, I gave you my arguments in the article. I talked about it all. These players I'm not in on at their ADP. I'll give you the first one here. It's Austin Ekeler. All right. Austin Ekeler. We're looking at it's a scheme change. Bolting out the door on Ekeler shares. Yeah, because Kellen Moore, his offensive scheme, it does not dictate passes to the running back. We saw that. How many times did you hear anybody complain about how Tony Pollard wasn't used in the passing game for the Cowboys? Herbert's going to focus on his receivers, on tight end Gerald Everett. Yeah, I'm not saying there's not going to be work for Ekeler. He'll still see targets, but he's not seeing the 127 targets that he saw last year. He got that last year because Herbert was hurt. And the scheme dictated it. Look at what Joe Lombardi did for Alvin Kamara, right? Alvin Kamara had an average of like 90 to 100 targets for the time that they were working together. Then Joe Lombardi goes to the Chargers, and you see Eckler's target share beef up even more so last year because of Herbert's injury, and he couldn't heave the ball downfield. But different story this year, much different story. Check out the article for the rest of the details. My next fade, bring it on up here. It's right, Jahmyr Gibbs. Howard says Jahmyr Gibbs on drafting him. So, listen, my biggest fear here is that Jahmyr Gibbs is not the player that really Detroit wanted, needed, or anything like that. They brought in David Montgomery on a 3-year, $18 million deal. David Montgomery is a versatile running back. He's more versatile than Jamal Williams. All right. He can catch passes out of the flat. He can do the work between the tackles. David Montgomery is a much more complete running back. Jahmyr Gibbs, he comes into the season and everybody's like, oh, he was so explosive in college and we love him so much. They're going to line him up in the slot. They're going to line him up on the outside. He's going to be utilized as a wide receiver. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And people are drafting him in the 3rd round. I heard from Eric Balkman of the FFPC yesterday that he thinks in the main event, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to creep into the tail end of the 2nd round because everybody thinks he's a league winner. What if he's not? I mean, how many times have we seen these pass-catching running backs in Detroit, and they didn't work. They didn't work at all. DeAndre Swift, we got all of this hype about DeAndre Swift when he first came into the league. We actually thought that he could take it between the tackles too. And that didn't happen. And he got phased out of the offense because Dan Campbell was like, this is not the running back that I want, right? Did the Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is not the running back you are looking for. And so I do worry here right now about that. So I just want to make sure that, you guys understand that, why I'm out. I'm out on him because there is the possibility that he could be just a third down pass catching running back. And if that's the case, he's being drafted way too high. Looking at the comments here. Oh, look at that. Randy Miller just said Jerry Jeudy carted off with a hamstring issue. That sucks balls. That sucks balls. Let's pay attention to this injury here. Y'all know I'm in on Cortland Sutton, and we're going to do our Fantasy Alarm flag planting show with me and Britt Flynn and Coop and Mpemba, and we're going to end up doing like all of that stuff together. But here, Jerry Jeudy, that's kind of a bummer here, and we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens. I'll see. Adam Bernard is going to be checking in on the updates for me. I'm still very bullish on Cortland Sutton, but we're going to have to take a look and see what are the Broncos going to end up doing, because Jeudy is going to be still a very big part of that offense. We'll take a look. Now back to my fades here. After Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian Watson, more like Christian not son. Listen, his work with Rodgers was great at the tail end of last year. Jordan Love does have the arm strength to get the ball downfield. This is about the offensive scheme in Green Bay, and you have to pay attention to that. In Green Bay, all right, LaFleur's offense, you're going to get in its purest form this year. Aaron Rodgers had complete autonomy at the line and changed the plays on the regular in Green Bay. Jordan Love will have some autonomy based on how he's reading the defense, but more often than not, he's going to have to stick to the play calling, and that's LaFleur's play calling. That's a heavy run scheme. You'll see a lot of Aaron Jones. You'll see a lot of A.J. Dillon. You'll see checkdowns to Aaron Jones as well. All right, and it's the short passing game, which favors Romeo Doubs a lot more than it favors Christian Watson. Doubs is a short yardage guy. He's a very good route runner, and he's going to help move those chains. They will take their deep shots downfield to Christian Watson, but just be very wary of what his target share is going to be and really what his full usage is, because if Green Bay's behind or whatever, and they're talking about heaving the ball downfield and passing heavy in the second half, well, that's all well and good, but the defense knows that too. So where Christian Watson's being drafted right now, it's too high for me. It's just a little too high for me. All right. My next fade here, the fourth one in the article. Again, you can get all the details. It's Mike Evans. And again, it comes down to scheme. Dave Canales, running the offense there. Very run-centric, very heavy on the short passing game. I think it favors Chris Godwin a lot more. Baker Mayfield in his last 2 years with Cleveland, yes, he rated very well when it came time for deep passing. He did, but he also had the best offensive line and one of the best offensive lines in football. He also had one of the greatest running backs that, sorry, but if they were running play action, there was no way the defense wasn't going to bite on that, because it's Nick frickin' Chubb. So I worry now about the offensive line. I worry about the opportunities. That offensive line held up for Tom Brady because he was all about that quick release. I don't know if Baker Mayfield's got that in him. We're going to have to wait and see. So Mike Evans, again, yeah, I'm kind of worried about him and where we're going to go. So check out my article over there at fantasyalarm.com. You want to make sure that you check it out. Read all my details about it, and then hit me up if you want to chat about it, and you got something else you want to say about it. You want to turn around and give me a counterpoint? Give me that counterpoint. Defend it, that's fine. Don't be a name caller on fantasy football Twitter telling me that I'm a donkey, but not giving me an actual reason as to why you do believe in Austin Ekeler or Christian Watson or Jahmyr Gibbs. And don't tell me, oh, he's just so explosive in college, because the college game ain't the pros. And you know who can back me up on that one right now? My guest today. So excited to bring him in here right now. You guys know him as at Football Diehard on the old Twitter machine. You also know him from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Look who's rocking the Pantera shirt. Did they open for Metallica, Bob, when you saw him in Texas?
They did, Howard, and it was a joyous affair. It turns out, like, not a huge surprise. Phil not in his prime anymore on the vocals. So, but encourage the audience to take over. We did. Zach Wild, a former colleague of ours on the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, just crushed it. And Charlie Benante, let me tell you, dude, 60 years old. him and Lars both. Just watching at this concert, you've got a pair of 60-year-old drummers. I might also be one of those. The distinction of the styles. Lars looked like he was ready to die by the end of the show. I mean, he's killing it, and he's a very active guy. Charlie, though, is playing much more rigorous, intense parts. But, man, such a smooth style, man. Looks like a jazz player. He's just sitting there doing his thing. It was amazing. Loved the whole show. Both nights of Metallica, by the way, were fantastic. Also, you didn't tell me I was coming here for Jahmyr Gibbs slander. I'll not stand for that, sir.
We'll let you plant your flag in just a little bit there, Bob. I'm not trying to slander Jahmyr Gibbs. Listen, man, I call it like I see it. You know I call it like I see it. So, but before we start getting to the takes there, because, yes, I asked you for some flag plants and some fades. And I love it because some of your fades are my flag plants and vice versa. So that's what makes this beautiful world go around and around and around. Before we get to all of that stuff, wait. So you were a drummer growing up?
I started playing drums when I was about 10 years old. I still play. I have a whopping kit unassembled in the garage at the moment, but I also play guitar too. So, kind of by osmosis of playing in bands for years and years, you kind of figure out a little bit of everything. But yeah, so primarily a drummer.
Top 3 influences as you were growing up?
On drums, one of the big reasons I started was Keith Moon from The Who. I'm a kid, 11 years old in Tucson, tasking my parents with finding me a double kick Premier drum set in Tucson, Arizona. An English brand of drums was no mean feat. They did accomplish it finally by the time I was about 13. So he was a huge influence. And, going on, of course, all the usual influences, John Bonham, Neil Peart, obviously, who you aspire to be, played tons of covers and, could mangle them reasonably well. But many, many influences as a drummer. But those are probably the top 3.
The first time I saw Rush in concert and I saw Neil Peart and I saw his kit, which blew me away. But even more so when you watch him and then you watch like old videos of him, it's like, when you watch like a cartoon and you've just got like a string of eyes going around with like 72 different arms, all kind of like, he is just, watching him play was one of the most amazing things.
I'm going to confess here. I am a huge connoisseur of drum porn. I probably spend every spare minute of my time. We all have busy schedules, but you need to decompress and relax a little bit. Mine is, watching drum cam videos endlessly and enjoying them all and wondering with each one I watch, whether it's, the super drummers, Danny Carey, Mike Portnoy, any of those guys, or even like, just some guys that are just doing their thing out there right now. I wonder why I ever bothered picking up a stick.
I got my producer in the chat here talking about Danny Carey of Tool.
He's probably number 1 right now. Like, right, if I was doing rankings right now, Danny Carey he does things that, polyrhythms, multiple time signatures, shifting signatures, things that are very difficult. I can't even count along, right? Let alone play. So, he would be right at the top of the heap among, like there's just a whole handful of them. Some like one guy that's totally underrated that a lot of people don't know about, Gavin Harrison, plays with Porcupine Tree, currently plays with King Crimson, a number of bands, but just a super great prog drummer who is so musical. There's so many of them out there. I listen endlessly and unapologetically. It's my jam, man.
Never apologize for the love of any kind of music, dude. Any kind of music. I grew up a heavy metal kid. And we'll get to all of that, but this is all about you. This is all about introducing you to the audience here. Would love to know. So you grew up wanting to be a drummer. You're 10 years old and you were doing that. And yet here you are, a fantasy sports analyst on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, key contributor over at Football Diehards. Talk to me here. How did that all end up happening?
So along about 1986, a friend, we had a small group of friends, like, everyone has their little gangs out there you hang out with. And we had one of our buddies go to San Diego to do some work, and he came back and basically the first words out of his mouth were, "I found this thing and you're going to love it." And that thing was fantasy football. And it was, of course, he was correct. We did love it. And we immediately started playing. And within a week of starting playing, I said, we don't know enough to play this right. We don't have the information we need to make the good decisions. And in 1986, it was a battle. The injury report came out Wednesdays in USA Today. That's all you had, that initial injury report, which surprise changes by the time Sundays come around. And so I started thinking in that direction. I was doing a little bit of graphic design and had like a small business doing. So I started making a newsletter for that league. And the next thing you know, I said, wait a minute. If everyone loves this as much as I do, I'm about to be the richest man on earth by giving people information. And of course, half of that was correct. The richest man part, I've got another 10 years to break even, I believe, 30 years into this career. But the love and the audience being there and the people sharing the love of just the hobby and the joy of playing it is irrefutable, right? It grows every year. I heard Rich Rebar said something the other night that that really struck home with me. This year is going to be the smallest year of fantasy football, right? Every year it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the growth has just been absolutely amazing. Rich Rebar is actually going to be on the Fantasy Alarm Show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio with me tonight, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So you guys can check that out too. All right, so that's where it all began. And yes, those pipe dreams of getting into the fantasy football content business to become a millionaire. Not so much. But talk to me here. Like, all right, so how did it get started on Sirius XM? How'd you hook up with Mike Dempsey? Talk to me about that, because Football Diehards with you and Dempsey, one of my all-time favorites on that channel.
So it is interesting how this played out. So back when I started that newsletter, right, and I went national. We put ads in USA Today and started taking orders, and we met a little bit of success. And I had a kid that was writing for me, a producer at WFAN radio back in New York City, a kid that went to the University of Arizona. I was based in Tucson, and we kind of knew each other. And so his name was Steve Cohen. And so he would call me every Monday and give me, dictate a column to me, literally, because I mean, this was 1993. There was not a lot of emailing going on, things like that. And so he would do that. And then I would send out a fax on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Well, he would call me from his radio, and he knew everyone who practiced, who didn't. And I would put that in a fax and zip out that fax on those days. So, so over the course of the year, and of course, I often heard from Steve going, Harris, when do I get paid? Well, we're working on that, Steve. And so at some point, we went our separate ways. We remained friends, of course. But he was out. And so over the course of years, things happened. And so I was doing some work for Football Guys, and David Dodds was doing a spot on a Jacksonville radio station every week. He couldn't make it one day. They said, hey, Bob, why don't you go fill in? And I filled in, and the host of that show was Mike Dempsey. And boom, that was it. So Dempsey said, well, can I keep this guy? No offense, David Dodds is great, but we just hit it off. And so I started doing regular spots on Dempsey's terrestrial radio program in Jacksonville in the early 2000s, and it just kept going from there. And it ended up, I did a lot of shows with him. Well, lo and behold, Steve Cohen turns out to be in charge of Sirius XM Fantasy Sport, NFL Radio, just the vice president of NFL Radio and fantasy. And so he was out listening to hosts in Jacksonville online to find somebody who could work with Maurice Jones-Drew. And he heard me and Dempsey working together, and he calls me, Harris, I'm hearing you on this thing. Wow, that's great. And I said, well, let's make it happen. Let's make something happen. And so it took like about a year or 2 years, but finally something happened, and that's the genesis of it.
I love it. I don't remember like when it was. I had been doing shows. I had started on Sirius XM on like I had started as a guest on the RotoWire show talking baseball, and I kept pounding on Matt Deutsch's door, being like, let me in. I can do my own show, dude. You hear me all the time. I gave him the whole, I'm a classically trained actor. I used to be a stand-up comic. I can keep the entertainment going, and that I know the content. So he gave me the Sunday night show, and I can't remember. I think it was when finally he gave me another show on Saturdays. And I think I was following you and Dempsey on the Football Diehards show. And for those of you who don't know, we have our equipment here at home. When we hook up about a half hour before the show starts to make sure that everything's running properly, you can hear the show that's being broadcast at that point. And when it goes to break, you can hear the host talking about breaks. I wish I could find the tweet. I was feverishly looking for this tweet from I don't know, this is probably like a good 7 or 8 years ago that I tweeted this out, where I was like, the best part about Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio is the stuff that you don't hear because Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey on the break is seriously the best thing you can ever listen to. You guys, the rapport is phenomenal, but the back and forth on the breaks, dude, you guys are so good. So funny.
Well, it's been a long haul for us, and eternally grateful for Sirius for giving us a platform, and happy to still be there, and looking forward to another season. I think since 2011, so we've been there a long time, and happy to be some small part of it, and going forward. Love working with the people there, including you. Go back to the days when people used to travel and do things in person, and we had a lot of opportunities to cover NFL drafts, Super Bowls, all kinds of things that were a really good time. And so just, the camaraderie between all the hosts is fantastic. That's a big part of the fun. And the people that work there are great. All our producers and stuff, you get, you build these friendships that have lasted past the times together at Sirius. So I love all that. And by the way, I see a lot of people in your chat that I know. I'm really surprised that I have not yet convinced Dame that Jahmyr Gibbs is the second coming of sliced bread.
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you that opportunity. I met Dame and Scampers for the first time at the Fantasy Football Expo this past year. So great to get a chance to talk to them. Well, then let's do it here. Let's talk flag plants and fades with Bob Harris here. Bob, all right, because we've been doing this over at Fantasy Alarm throughout the week, both on the show and on the website. Tonight we're recording our flag plant show. Do you want to start with the positive, or do you want to start with the negative? You want to go with a flag plant, or do you want to go with a fade? Where do you want to live?
We've already thrown Gibbs out there. Let's go ahead and hit that one. And by hit it, I mean hit it. I am the hammer. Jahmyr Gibbs is my nail. Actually, I have two nails. We'll talk about another one. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I feel like no hang your head shit, Dame. This is the great thing about it. I mean, nobody knows who's right. Nobody knows who's wrong. We sit here and we tell ourselves happy stories. And the key to fantasy success is realizing when your happy story isn't happy and jumping off abandoning ship in a timely enough manner to save yourself. So I'm hoping Jahmyr Gibbs is a thing, and I'm basing it on some simple principles here. We're drafting Bijan Robinson in the first round based on his draft capital, anticipated workload, running behind a decent offensive line. There are other people in that backfield, I'll remind you, and not a really proven quarterback. So, okay. What about Jahmyr Gibbs, who went 4 picks later? And if you watch the video floating around on the Twitterverse out there, or the X world, whatever you call that now, Howard, I don't know. What's the appropriate for it?
I keep calling it Twitter because I'm a dodgy old fart who's stuck in his ways.
Hello. Hello, it's the mirror. You looked on the Twitter, you saw some of the footage from the draft. Honestly, I had the feeling they would have taken Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of Bijan. Whatever people thought of that, they didn't care. That was their guy. They ended up pulling off a trade, but you could see their joy when they had the guy. Then there were other videos out there of Scotty Montgomery, the running back coach, interviewing Jahmyr Gibbs, and you could just see he was lighting up Scotty Montgomery. So they're clearly all in on Jahmyr Gibbs. You are correct. David Montgomery's there. This team likes to use multiple running backs. I think they'd like for Jahmyr Gibbs to be what they hoped DeAndre Swift would be. And we'll see if he can be that. The opportunities are going to be there, though. And so you look back at last year's running back production in Detroit, which was obviously skewed. I don't know if anyone's going to get the 17 touchdowns this year. Well, let's give 55% of that production, the overall production, to Jahmyr Gibbs this year. He's running back 8, right? So he's outperforming his draft position more so than what I expect Bijan Robinson to. And we'll talk about him in a moment. And I'm fine having any of these guys on my team. I will acknowledge right here now, I liked 4th round Jahmyr Gibbs better than I like 3rd round Jahmyr Gibbs, and probably better than I'm going to like late 2nd round Jahmyr Gibbs, because that is where it's going. So some of these things are shifting issues, and you have to be careful of that. But you saw what they wanted DeAndre Swift to be, right? And they just never trusted him to be that. And we still saw some pretty productive seasons despite some missed time and, shared workloads, all those things. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy they're all in on. But we cannot overlook the offensive line, maybe the second best offensive line in football, a seasoned quarterback who at least half the time plays at home and is going to be really good, I'm told, in Jared Goff. And so for all those reasons, I'm in on him. It's mostly the value, comparatively speaking, to, let's say, Bijan Robinson or some of the other first rounders that we're drafting. Everyone you're drafting in the first round, you're drafting at your ceiling, because that's how fantasy football works. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're getting closer to drafting Jahmyr Gibbs at a ceiling, but not quite there yet.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, you heard my spiel. I don't need to rehash it. So plant a second flag. Where are you going?
Darren Waller, come to me, young man.
Like that a lot.
Right. So, I mean, you look at that Giants receiving room, and all due respect to Paris Campbell and the rest of those little kids, like Isaiah Hodgins is the only outlier of this group, right? But Darren Waller is the de facto wide receiver one. I think when I'm drafting tight ends, I want those guys who are going to be their team's leading target getter, or at least have that opportunity to do that. So Travis Kelce in the first round, happy to draft him there. I have drafted him there. Mark Andrews, pretty strong argument that he's going to be that team's wide receiver one. I'm all about that. Like what Todd Monken has done in the recent past, beyond the University of Georgia, his last pro stops, building competent offenses and maximizing the passing games there. So I like that. TJ Hawkinson. Okay, I think he's going to get a large target share. The Vikings throw the ball nearly 65% of the time. But also Justin Jefferson's there, and his 180-ish targets aren't going away. Adam Thielen's gone, but Jordan Addison's there. There's another 100-plus targets. KJ Osborne got 90 last year. So I'll grant you that Hawkinson had that spell where, and maybe they intend to use him that way again. He and Justin Jefferson were tied last year over a 3-game stretch near the end of the season for the most targets in the NFL, right? So that outcome is possible, but it doesn't seem like the most likely. So my next guy on my list, you could say George Kittle's in there. He has the same problem that Hawkinson does. There are too many mouths to feed. In Waller's case, there doesn't. We've seen the chemistry a little bit on, in real time and during the recent exhibition game, but more so, we do on the show, Howard, we bring in beat writers. Mm-hmm. I brought on board a lot of New York Giants beat writers, Chris Pisignano from Giant Insider, more recently Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post. They've told the same story, and it dovetails with the happy story I've told myself about Darren Waller. The words that were bandied about were like unguardable, unstoppable, uncoverable, dominant. I remember Chris Pisignano saying, you hear about guys who are listed at a size and talked about their speed, and you see them on the field and you go, nah, they're not that big. Waller's bigger, right? And faster and all those things. So look, we all know health has to be part of the equation for him, and it has not been the last 2 years. But you can go back to 2020 to see when he drew those 145 targets for the Raiders. Expecting him to be in that target range again in New York, assuming good health. And I am injury agnostic, people. If you're out there going, but he's always hurt. I don't care. Always hurt before, not always hurt this year. I mean, we'll see. Maybe it does, and maybe I'll regret it. Probably not, because I don't regret these things. But I'm going to go ahead and play him. Daniel Jones, hoping he progresses as a passer. But a big part of this, it should not be overlooked, is Brian Daboll and his ability demonstrated over the course of time to make use of interesting players and create mismatches with guys who are in position to do that. And Darren Waller gives him that guy.
Listen, I love it. I agree with you 100%. I think the target rate's going to be there for him. I agree with you everything about that wide receiver room. I don't buy into, and Isaiah Hodgins, mind you, was like my MVP last year. Like he helped me win a championship because Hodgins just had this great stretch and nobody was in on him. So I get that. All right. So plant the flag in Jahmyr Gibbs, plant the flag in Darren Waller. Let's talk about fades. You gave me the big name already. You might as well just dish it out because you and I are on opposite sides of this one. But tell me, who's your big fade?
So it's Bijan, and it's not that I'm necessarily fading him. It's just that I don't value him as highly as others, and I'm not getting as many of him, right? Like, if he makes it to 8, okay, maybe I'm a little more open to that. I'm not open to the first 2 or 3 picks that Casey Joyner, the football scientist, on my live stream last night. He's got him at 3. Others do as well, and I get that. Draft capital and anticipated volume. But is this truly an explosive offense? Is it a high volume offense? I know a lot of people out there are expecting Bijan Robinson to get 60 catches. Will he get those catches? Are we sure the quarterback's going to pull this off? So I guess, just like, I think he's going to be very good. And I think people who end up drafting him are probably not going to be upset that they drafted him. This is a finer distinction where I'm trying to make the point that sometimes there's value to be found a little bit later that's similar to what you're paying and the lost opportunities that you're getting other players who are maybe certain things. Look, I'm old enough to remember when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going in the first round, people. That was just a couple of years ago. So you're all that old. So that's my only point is like, I'm fine drafting Bijan, and I could tell myself a happy story about Bijan. He comes from Tucson, Arizona, where I played back in the day. So So he's got that going for him. But honestly, and it's a good offensive line, but has Arthur Smith really maximized the value of the great picks that he's had the last couple of years? Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I'm not so sure he has. So I'm hoping for the best. And like I said, I'll invest at the right price, maybe the tail end of the first round, not as eager in the first half.
And that's one of the things that everybody needs to understand. When we talk about fades, like Austin Ekeler is a fade of mine. It's not that I'm not going to draft Austin Ekeler. I'm just not going to draft him as the number 3 pick. I'm not going to draft him, as the second overall running back or the first overall running back. But at the right price, if he falls to, well, there you go. So give me one more fade then for you here. Bijan and
we get to the point where we have so many that and not just people were in on, but I'll go ahead and go with Breece Hall. I mean, this seems too easy. I should go with my other one, which is T. Higgins, which, I mean, a lot of people would argue that he's going at a very fair price. It's going to be a super explosive passing offense. I'd rather he were a little cheaper. I don't think he's going to end up as a wide receiver 1 level producer. So I'm going to go with him. Breece Hall seems like the easier one. I think, he's moved around. He's dropped down to like the 4th round. I'd still rather take Dalvin Cook at the 6th right now. Right. So I'd rather take that chance, just the history of guys coming off ACLs. But both those guys, I think, are going at a little bit higher prices that I'm comfortable with. But that is the other portion of this. Like, when you're driving down the road and there's a pothole, there's usually enough road to drive around it. In your fantasy draft also, there's enough room to drive around it. You can just swerve around, pick up somebody who you have a better feeling about, you've told yourself happier stories about. But again, the secret to all this is being ready to bail on your narratives as soon as it turns out your narratives aren't coming to fruition, right? That's the struggle. We get emotionally invested in the stories we've told ourselves, the narratives we built. And even if they're based on, like, again, talking to the beat writers, doing our study, looking at the metrics and checking all the analytics, all these things, we can cobble together these great glowing stories. That does not guarantee they will come to pass. And what you need to be able to do is, when you see them not coming to pass, you need to bail on them. You can't, I'm not wrong yet. That will take you all the way to the end of the season, when you will feel miserable because you didn't make the playoffs.
Very well said. Very wise words. I think, that's always the thing that I think the point that gets missed a lot of the times, when we talk about being fluid in your drafts, and we talk about letting the draft come to you, and we talk like we're not saying this to be trite or have cliches. We're saying this because it is it's an ever-changing, ever-evolving process.
Right. All these things are super nuanced, and we live in a world where everyone wants a black or white, this or that answer to everything. I will give you that this or that answer every time you ask for it, but I'll try to provide a little bit of the nuance, because everything, as a former graphic designer, 256 shades of gray, I'm told, are available to you. And all those things come into play in these circumstances, and our ability to control them and know everything we need to know about them have limits, and we need to acknowledge that and be ready to move on when it turns out we weren't absolutely spot on.
All right. Well, in honor of your call for fluidity in drafts, you just having seen the couple of Metallica shows, Adam Bernard going to see Metallica for 2 nights at SoFi.
You're gonna like this.
Here we go, baby. How about it's time for our heavy metal draft? That's right. Here we go. 3-person draft. Bob, me, and Adam. And here's the criteria. You ready for this one, Bob?
Go.
All right. Adam, show him what he's got to draft here. What is required of him? That's right.
All right. So, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, please. After you, actually. Explain.
So it's a 160s, 70s era metal band, 180s, 90s era metal band. I have one slight thing to explain to that when we see the band pool. Then 1 actual metal. We're talking gold, tungsten, titanium, and then 2 flex spots. Try and build your best balanced roster there. Now, to take a look at the pool of available bands. So in the 60s, 70s era, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Blue Oyster Cult, Deep Purple, Kiss, Thin Lizzy, Motorhead, and Judas Priest. Van Halen should fall into that, but I needed to move them over, and they have enough of an 80s resume that I could throw them there. Tool, Slayer, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, Pantera, Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, and then to give you some value, I give you the Black Sabbath Dio albums and the Dio solo era. So we combine those because Black Sabbath with Ozzy is kind of like its own thing. So you get both Black Sabbath here if you choose to want to go down that path. And then for the metals, there's 8 total here: silver, platinum, iron, aluminum, titanium, tungsten, gold, and bronze. So it's time to build some rosters here.
Time to build some rosters. One 60s, 70s band, one 80s, 90s band, one metal, and then 2 flexes. Bob, as our guest, you get the first pick of the draft.
Well, I appreciate that because there's really only one right answer. I love every single band on the list here, right? Every single band in the pool is fantastic. It's like people ask you what your favorite band of some bunch of bands are, and I'm like, I don't have children, but if I did, I'm sure it would be like, you're asking me to pick my favorite child, which is like you can't actually admit to. You have one, but you can't admit to it. In this case, this is easy for the 60 and 70s. The true wellspring of heavy metal as we know it today is Black Sabbath.
A very wise pick. Absolutely. Oh, look at that. He's busted out album covers for us now. I love it. All right. Black Sabbath to Bob Harris. Adam, you are on the clock.
So, I mean, listen, Black Sabbath, strong choice. If they were there, I can't say I wouldn't take them, talking Ozzy era, but for the same reasons Bob said, if you have to pick a favorite child. I mean, I'm seeing them for like the 36th and 37th time this weekend. Got to go Metallica here with my first overall pick, second overall.
Damn it.
See, and I knew you guys were both going in that direction, so I get the wheel pick here right now. I'm super psyched about that. I'll let you update you're all over the place in this doc, buddy. You are a mess right now. You got Bob's Black Sabbath under my name. I don't even know where you're going here. But I'm just going to go flat out here. I'm going to make this easy peasy lemon squeezy, my 60s, 70s metal band entry and my first flex. Just put it down here right now. Led Zeppelin and Iron Maiden, 2 of my absolute favorites of all time. Cannot argue against any of them. I just want to take them off the board right now, even though it's probably, I should probably go for a different depth play. But Zeppelin and Maiden, oh baby. Oh, baby.
Maiden's body of work is so vast. The catalog has become so vast over the course of time. And I can go back 1983's Peace of Mind, maybe one of the best metal albums, new wave of British heavy metal albums of all time.
A huge fan there. I actually, here you go, just to show you the Long Island in me. I had Number of the Beast painted on my denim jacket in the back when I was growing up.
You ask?
Pack of Marlboro Reds in the front pocket, Number of the Beast on the back. Adam, you're up.
As you can see, I've switched the slide at the top for the metals, and tungsten is very, very valuable. It's used in a lot of things nowadays. I could easily go with a band here, but bottom line is there's a lot of great bands still out there. I'm still going to get my value. Give me tungsten for my metal slot.
Ooh, it's a tough pick there. It's a tough pick. It was on my depth chart. I'm not going to lie. Bob, you get 2 picks here.
I'm going to go ahead and lock in my 80s, 90s band here. If we're going through the hierarchy of the big 4, for me, Metallica would be the top of that list. Slayer would be the next band on that list. I've been a long time fan, discovering them in the late 80s. And Dave Lombardo, one of those drummers out there that redefined what double kick playing was.
All right. Well, all right. Slayer it is. Now you get your next pick.
And I'll take my medal, and it's going to be gold. What's the matter with you guys?
I mean, it is the value it's the gold standard. It's what stood the test of time. I mean, people used to try and raid and steal for it. Yeah, the gold rush.
They still do.
Named after it. So, yeah.
All right, Bernard, what are you taking?
So I got to go back to bands here. My my 60s, 70s band is just kind of still sitting wide open, and there is some tempting ways to go there. I almost feel obligated since I am wearing a Motorhead T-shirt. Lemmy is God. We do know that. So I'm going to take God, God of God here, and I'm going to take Motorhead with my third pick.
Just to be open and transparent here, when I went to the Metallica show on Sunday night, I was sporting a Motorhead shirt.
Ah, look at that. There you go. Well, at least you weren't that guy who wore the band's T-shirt to that show.
I'm never that guy.
All right. Well, 2 picks for me here on the wheel. I'm going to go to my 80s, 90s heavy metal. And while, Bob, you pulled Black Sabbath off of the board there for the beginning, I will take that solo career of the Ozzy Osbourne era in the 80s and 90s, right? Blizzard of Oz, Bark at the Moon, just an absolute amazing guy. I mean, I saw Ozzy so many times in concert at Madison Square Garden. It was phenomenal. And then I'll take my my precious metal, and I'll take platinum off the board right now here. So Ozzy and platinum, they kind of just go hand in hand, don't they?
It's true.
It's true. Ozzy, has found so many great musicians, and not the least of which Randy Rhoads, of course, we all know, but some people we also know. Zakk Wylde was early on in Ozzy's band, and also a friend of the network, a friend of mine, Mike Inez, now in Alice in Chains, was discovered as just a young fella. Got in on Ozzy Osbourne's band early on during the No More Tears period and did a tour with him and had a great time. So a lot of connections there.
All right, nice, Adam. It puts you on the board here, man. You what are you taking? You got flex plays here.
Yeah, I mean, I got flex plays here, and there's still some quality bands out there. I'm happy with one medal. I don't know if I'm going to go with 2 medals. I'll tip my hand a little bit there, but seeing the shirt Bob's wearing, I kind of have to snipe him here and take Pantera. I'm sorry, buddy. I got to do it. I'm almost more pumped to see them on Friday than I am Metallica, just because I never saw them in their original form. And I recognize it's more Partera than Pantera now. But hey, if you could cherry pick a replacement for Dimebag, it would be Zach, and the same thing for Vinnie Paul with Charlie Benante. So give me Pantera here.
All right, Pantera to you. Bob, your last 2 picks, both flex plays. I'm a little nervous that you're going to take my my pick off the board here, but the floor is yours.
So every band on here merits your attention if you're out there in the audience. And I know Mr. Scampers is dialing up and making a list here and checking it twice. I'm going to go with some obvious ones. Judas Priest, Stained Glass, one of the early thrash, even going back to before that, Sin After Sin. I mean, some of the greatest early thrash songs of all time, the rock god and the metal god himself, Rob Halford on vocals. I'm going to go with Judas Priest, and I'm going to go with my last band, probably my favorite band, which I don't really count as like true metal. It's going to be Tool. It's way proggier than metal, but probably right up there with Metallica. Ranks among my favorite bands. A remarkable group of musicians, and they put together some super high-end, intellectually stimulating music.
All right. Well, I dodged a bullet there. Listen. I love those picks. Bob, I love your team. Your team looks strong. Looks solid.
Feel good about it.
Right, Adam, your last pick here. Where do you need? You need a flex play here?
I do need a flex play. We're going to go with one of these bands on the screen. I was kind of hoping Judas Priest would get back to me, but really good pick there by Bob. I saw them last March, and Rob Halford could still sing, man.
Yes,
he's still got that voice. Well, man, if you haven't seen them, go see them. I mean, 50 years, that speaks for itself. I would feel bad if I didn't walk away with some share of Black Sabbath ownership here, and I get Dio in that as well. So some of Tony Iommi's best work in Mob Rules right here. So we're going to take that.
Great album.
Great album. Fantastic. All right. Well, then that leaves me with the final pick of the draft, and I'm super pumped about it. I can't believe you guys didn't take him off the board. Give me AC/DC, baby. Come on. Highway to Hell. One of the all-time greatest songs of all time. Come on.
That whole
album's ridiculous.
Like, there's not a bad note on that album. There are a handful of perfect albums out there. Many of the bands represented here have some of those. I'll say Pantera, Metallica. You can say what you want, but A Master of Puppets probably one of the greatest albums of all time. But Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power, probably on that list as well. Many of them, but that AC/DC album, Highway to Hell, cannot be overlooked.
Definitely cannot be overlooked. Yeah, everybody's like, "Oh, Back in Black." Yeah, it was great. No, I love girls in fraternity houses singing "You Shook Me All Night Long," just like the next person. But my Lord, dude. All right, well, there you go. We're gonna post these results. I'll post them on Twitter. so that everybody can see this. Bob, dude, thank you so much, man. I know how busy you are this time of year. I really appreciate you taking the time to have some fun with me today and get to hang out.
It was delightful. Love the fine people in your chat. See them all. Hello, Wendy. Hello, Scampers. Hello, Dame. Everybody. Nate. Love all these people. So great time. And I love you, Howard. So it was a great time.
I love you too. Why don't you shout out everything that you need to promote for right now so that people can get all of your work?
At Football Diehard on Twitter. FootballDiehards.com on the interwebs. Football Diehards YouTube channel. Go there. I'm there every Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Saturdays at noon. Howard's going to be coming on soon. He doesn't even know this yet. And the Football Diehard. I make this easy. All things Football Diehards is where you find me. Also on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. So check it out. Get us on demand at your convenience.
Bob Harris at Football Diehard. You're one of my favorites. I love you so much. I would love to sit and hang out with you for hours and hours on end, but I got to move on to another show, and you got to move on to work.
I do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. Give him a follow on Twitter if you don't already. If you don't already, you're a moron. At Football Diehard. Oh, look at that. My final five, it's already up here. So what you folks don't know is I had the opportunity, and because of this show, I was not able to interview Rob Corddry. All right. It's Corddry, but that's okay, Adam. I won't, Rob's not watching this show right now, so he doesn't know. But I was supposed to interview him today at 1 p.m. Eastern. I wasn't able to, and he wasn't able to move it to 12:30. So y'all get Jeff Radcliffe interviewing Rob Corddry. So in honor of that, for my final five, top 5 film roles for Rob Corddry, one of my absolute favorites. There you go. Number 5, he played Mac in The Heartbreak Kid. And if you didn't see him keep growing out that little that tuft of hair at the top that he's got, absolutely fantastic. Love him so much. Number 4, Kyle from Semi-Pro. Come on, you guys remember it was like the ultimate cuck, right? He's sitting there watching his girl get it on with Woody Harrelson in the movie. Rob Corddry was just so crazy funny about it. Absolutely love him. Number 3, how about Hader from What Happens in Vegas? Was absolutely one of the funniest moments there. That courtroom scene is brilliant. There's so much else that you want to talk to about with him. Absolutely loved it. Number 2, Joe Crutel from Ballers. Yeah, that's right. Ballers, such a great show. And Rob played Joe, the partner of Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Absolutely fantastic. And then here you go. The number 1 role for Rob Corddry in movies. It's Lou, the Violator from Hot Tub Time Machine. How great was he? I almost wish that it was Lugal and not Google these days. That's going to do it for us here on the show. Huge thanks to you all for tuning in. Huge thanks to Adam Bernard, my illustrious producer, and an even bigger thank you to Bob Harris for joining us here on the show. Love all you guys in the chat. I'm Howard Bender. This has been Getting Buzzed. We'll catch you next time.